I'm just feeling a lot of really good power in this morning's webinar group. I'm feeling power. That's really nice. It's a good feeling. Yesterday's group was all about the heart. Very, very soft. Today's group, we've got energy. We've got oomph. Wonderful. We'll use that. Use that to make some great progress today. All right. It's 11 o'clock. Let's begin. I'm looking at my list here. Oh, yeah, a bunch more people just arrived in the last few seconds. Awesome. Okay. Good. Yeah, let us begin. As always, I start with a prayer of gratitude to my teacher, Maharishi, and to Ma, the mother of the universe, birther of all the creation, source of creation, for being the very life of this live webinar healing session, for being that. Thank you to all the infinite diversity of the express level of creation. Thank you to all those forms, particularly those with the wisdom, capabilities, and perspective that allow us to make maximum use of our time and to promote the most powerful evolutionary transformations possible during our hour and 15 minutes here. Thank you. Thank you to everyone's ancestors for their ever-present desire for the highest good, highest evolution, for their willingness to be part of the session, for allowing these healings to go right down into the DNA of the physiology and to make the changes that are required at this time in history, at this time in our lives, for maximum evolution. Thank you to everyone's divine presence for coming together, for working together, for being none other than that source of creation, for being aligned. Thank you. We're going to have a great webinar today. Okay, so one of the things I noticed in the last couple of days, which is why I reworded the statement for what this webinar was about in the last couple of days, even before it started. We try to plan the webinars ahead, right? But a lot of evolution takes place from the time we make the plan, which is like 2 months ahead. A lot can happen in 2 months or 1 month ahead or whatever. So one of the points that came up was I noticed that it seems that the majority of anomalies, boundaries, barriers, and source of discord seems to kind of get stuck or sit in the 4 denser levels of the physiology. And the source of the solutions and answers, of course, is the field of pure being. But the solutions tend to express through the finer levels of the physiology. So we tend to find solutions at the deep levels, and we tend to create solutions or find solutions, problems, create or find problems at the denser levels of the physiology. So it's appropriate that today's healing webinar is about looking in to some of the details of the mechanics of what's going on at the denser levels of the physiology and how those can interface with the finer levels of the physiology to produce a system that really gives rise to deep fulfillment in life, that allows us with grace, and grace was the theme of yesterday's webinar, grace to overcome or to pass through the difficulties, boundaries, or problems in a way which is beautiful and evolutionary, which supports the evolutionary process rather than pulling us back down. So part of that is about creating belief systems or structures which put us in a position of autonomy over all the details of the mechanics of this interface between denser and subtler levels of being. And I'm just thinking right now, I have a healing webinar from Chicago where there was a healing for the gap between the denser and subtler. So I'm just throwing that out there. That could be useful to people at some point to check out. Quick, very, very brief review for everybody who's here, all the new people, just checking. Yes. Yes, we have some new people. So I just want to very briefly do a little review of what do we mean when we talk about energy work and just lay out fundamentals. Energy work is the act of directing awareness intelligently. Awareness by its nature is divine. Well, everything is. Everything in creation, every little detail of creation is basically comprised of consciousness or being. It's just that at the surface where we have our bodies and where we have all of our physical material stuff, all of our stuff, at that level, it appears that there are gaps and spaces between where there is consciousness and where there is not consciousness. Like we may say, oh yes, well, my body is full of consciousness, but this air molecule out here perhaps isn't full of consciousness. But the reality is that everything is consciousness. Everything's the same consciousness, is one underlying great vast being of creation. And all of us have the joy in this lifetime to be the antennas of that great, vast, infinite, unmanifest, and yet underlying fundamental principle of everything. We get to experience it through the antenna, which is the self. Okay, so we focus our attention. Attention is our tool of divine being. Pure attention, pure awareness, pure consciousness. It focuses out and it gets on the spot where the problem is. And when it does that, it activates or enlivens its own nature, which is totality, wholeness, completion, resolution. So some imbalance is there, and that imbalance is incomplete. It feels uncomfortable because there is an incompletion. And awareness comes in and it provides the other piece of the picture to create a full picture, and completion occurs and it feels good. And that imbalance is no longer necessary. Or in other words, it has been transformed through the application of attention. So what we're doing today is we're going to bring attention into some areas that are going to empower everyone to handle their affairs more effectively, to be able to create balance, to be able to create just the condition inside the antenna that will allow for maximum progress, maximum evolution, maximum, as I mentioned before, grace in dealing with and handling life situations, health situations. All right. So what I'm doing now is I'm just feeling into the group, because we handled a lot yesterday, and I know you're all going to get recordings of yesterday's session, so I don't want to be too redundant. I want everyone to be able to get fresh information, fresh new extensions of what we already know. And today is a new day, and things are different today. Okay, but one of the things that's the same from yesterday is that one of the fundamental principles, or we could call it tools, that we're working with in order to promote good is belief systems. Belief systems. And belief systems tend to sit in the mental and emotional bodies. That's where we tend to hold them. Sometimes we'll hold them as like really old memories or impressions in, past lives. And of course, the ancestors have their belief systems. So when we're dealing with our own belief system, we're always juxtaposing our current belief system against the belief systems of our predecessors and working for ways to create integration there so that everybody's belief or vision of reality can be honored. And at the same time, we have freedom to live at this time, space-time, at this point in creation, and move forward. A lot of times what happens with belief systems is they're good and appropriate and useful for a certain time. And one of those I'd like to bring up right now is for our ancestors. We have ancestors online. Looks like we're working right now with 5 generations of ancestors. And it has been considered necessary for grace, for graceful interactions with the rest of society, with our families and our friends, to, if possible, if necessary, to lie just a little bit in order to keep things smooth. That's been appropriate. And if things are bad, you smile and you say, oh, everything's fine. When it's not fine. And that's been appropriate, you know, but, or if somebody says, oh, wow, you just did me a huge favor. You're so incredible. Thank you. You say, oh, no, I'm not. I'm really not very incredible. I'm kind of pathetic. And that's just, you know, that was considered humility. That was a form of humility. But the reality right now, and I wrote this up in the recent write-up on today's talk, is that laws of nature have shifted, particularly over about the last couple of weeks. I think Jupiter made a transit. And right about that time, different laws of nature started to activate in the matrix of creation that support truth, transparency, honesty, even if the truth is something not what you think people want to hear, or not. We don't, of course, want to, it's not that we go into a big egotistical thing. If someone says, oh, wow, thank you for doing this beautiful thing for me, you did an excellent job, going, oh, yes, I'm so much better than everybody. No, obviously not. You know, at that point, the truth, the real truth is being is doing it. Being is doing it. You obviously deserve to have that nice thing happen for you, because if you didn't, it wouldn't have happened. And because you deserved it, somebody would have done that for you, or you would have done it yourself. So thank you for letting me be the instrument, is the answer at that point. Not, oh no, I'm pathetic and I really didn't do a good job, or oh, I'm better than everyone. Just simple. So what are we talking about there? Ego, right? So what happens is ego also gets stuck in these mental and emotional levels of the physiology, and it connects into belief systems and thereby justifies certain belief systems. The belief systems are what limit. So we want to go and look at those a little bit. We want to look at the mechanics, especially behind them, because the nature of the human brain, and you'll notice in today's and yesterday's session, we went back and forth quite a bit between doing actual physical healings for the body and then healings at the mental emotional levels, and then down into the deep subtle levels of being and how those are interfacing. So we have to come over to the physical body just for a minute here. This is important and leads into today's theme, which is dramas. As one of the themes, dramas. In the brain, there are the 2 big lobes on the 2 sides, the 2 big cranial hemispheres there. Cerebral hemispheres, I think they're called. And then on the inside, there are a bunch of little tiny organs. And inside in the little tiny organ area, which is known as the limbic system, there's an organ called the caudate, and it's sort of shaped like a C. And most of the organs in the limbic system double. That means there's one on this side and there's one on this side. You know, there's the thalamus has 2 segments, and the hypothalamus has 2 segments, and the pituitary has 2 segments like that. So the caudate is on both sides like that. And on one side of the caudate, there's a pleasure center. And on the other side of the caudate down here, there's a pain center. And then right underneath that, there's a section called the hippocampus, which is your memory center, which sits right next to the pain center, so that if you do something painful, it sends a message to your memory center, and your memory center says, oh, note to self, don't do that again. Okay, so we've got this pleasure and pain center. And the deal about it is they're really close to each other. They're like that. And so we can have pleasurable experiences, like eating ice cream or looking at a pretty picture or something. There's a pleasurable experience. And we can have painful experiences, but sometimes experiences activate both of those 2 sensory organs simultaneously, and there's a certain sort of proportion of activation that's extremely blissful. so that you get what I call kind of poignant happiness, certain kinds of experiences that are beautiful, but they make you cry at the same time, right? Like a movie that makes you cry, or being with a person when they leave their life is a very beautiful thing to see, and it's also very painful at the same time. Or birth. Birth is another example. Births are painful, and yet they're unbelievably, amazingly fantastic too. So anyway, there are certain life experiences like that, and those life experiences tend to be transformative. And so there's a tendency to aim toward those sort of experiences. The only thing is that because it's activating both the pleasure and pain at the same time, we've held for centuries, many generations, belief systems that there's something wrong with those experiences. There's something inherently sinful or difficult, or you shouldn't move in the direction of experiences that activate both at the same time. The shift over to greater transparency and truth has given us all the freedom to explore those kind of experiences without remorse or regret. And I'm not suggesting that we should aim towards painful experiences, but what I am suggesting is that a lot of the difficult situations that people have gotten into in the past that are like really dramatic, like dramas and stuff, are a byproduct of a desire to elicit that response from the system. The dramatic experiences, that's what they're for, is to elicit that response of, oh dear, oh my God, it's so exciting because we're going to really fix something now. You know, something's going to change. Knowing the mechanics is important. Clearing the feelings of guilt, remorse, shame, embarrassment out of the pleasure and pain centers in the brain, out of the physical structure of the pleasure and pain center, is what is taking place right now. Clearing that. Fear, clearing fear. All of our experiences are the mother of creation, the source of the whole universe, experiencing itself and understanding itself better, knowing itself through us. So even when we have an experience, it's not really like it's just our experience. Your experience and my experience is actually the experience of totality, through the points of individuality, through the points of the different antennas, the value of our group session here. And I'm feeling my awareness is moving into the group, and I say my, but awareness of being moving in through the group is creating an integrated structure. I'm actually seeing a kind of a swirling structure being created here. It's interesting. It's a kind of it's very interesting. It has a mathematical foundation, and ironically, my son, who does advanced math, is taking a test at this moment. He's working with multiple variable functions or something, I don't know, something. Anyway, this is what's happening in creation, is that we have already, as a collective, created something that looks like a great big swirling torus or a big rick of some kind, like a big form of sacred geometry, which is sort of churning and folding in on itself. And that is obviously a divine structure. So what I'm doing whenever divine structure presents is offering divine structure into the silence of being. Because as such, it is divine being speaking to itself with so much gratitude and appreciation for this. This is a very sophisticated structure, which of course, as soon as I offer it in, the download comes back. So I'm spouting out the download to you now. This sophisticated structure is only possible because of the quality of energy which has been brought to today's live webinar. And my husband's point about, about the lights being a little bit too bright is well taken. Let's see, is that a little better? I'm seeing, talking about light, and there's, okay, that's better. It's better. It's better. You don't have to, it's better. I fixed it. It was too bright, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, I knew it. Also, something fell out of my computer when I did that. Sorry. Anyway. Also a comedy show. We can do comedy, right? No. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you did that so well. Okay. Good. I look like I was radiant light, right? Because everything was reflecting off my forehead. Okay. That's a little better. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. So, yeah, boundaries and limitations, dramas. All we have to do is talk about dramas, and all of a sudden, whoa, there it is. So good to have an example, a concrete example, because here I'm going into this whole abstract thing, and we needed concrete. Dramas are incomplete forms of the act of devotion. So active devotion, extremely evolutionary. That is tenderest love coupled with service. And ultimately with dramas, that's what we're aiming for, is to be in a state of devotion all the time. Every minute, every breath is an act of devotion. Is how can I serve you better? How can I serve you better? How can I serve you better? And it is the antenna of the universe folding back into infinite being, just saying, how can I serve you better? How can I serve you better? In that state of devotion, we have to go beyond a generalized perception of what it means to serve. Because it's very easy for people to get caught in the idea that service means sacrifice. When the heart is flowing with abundance of love, then whatever the action step is taken is not sacrifice. It's joy. And if time and energy are required in that act of service, then that brings in just a little bit of, I'm using my time and energy, but it's coupled with all the fullness of love, and then you get the right mix of sweetness and challenge to perpetuate life forward into the next level. So the belief that service means sacrifice, or that the more I suffer, the more service I am providing. This is not to discount the suffering of the ages, because we know that ancestors and even ourselves in our own life have gone through very challenging times. Those times were also service. Those times were also useful to the creation. Right now what's happening is that swirling rick is still with us, and what it's doing is it's promoting ripples of very concentrated understanding that are going through this awake system, this matrix of life, which is wide awake and allowing for the flow of truth. And basically, our webinar, everyone watching, everyone who will be watching, are functioning together as a unified wholeness, which is acting as a great healing structure for creation, for our world, for our world. Yesterday at the end of the webinar, we came across the piece of information, useful information, that a lot of the really problem difficulties that we faced in our world, like wars, like the kind of darknesses and difficulties that have given rise to the world not being blissful, life-supporting, and evolutionary for everyone, have come as a result of a lack of coordination between the entire belief system structures of Earth and humanity, and life as it exists in simultaneous parallel universes, and life as it exists in many other places of our universe that are at completely different levels of experience and perception. What that means is us being out of tune with ourselves, because at the celestial level of self, you encompass all that. All that belongs to you. All those simultaneous parallel universes, all those beings whose bodies look completely different from ours, who don't even have physical structures, or who look like funny little, worms or something, whatever. There are lots of different beings in creation, four-headed elephants or whatever. They all belong to the self. They all belong to the self. Anything we conceive, anything we know, anything we can perceive, anything we can comprehend is still finding its source in being. And we are the antennas of being. So it finds its source in our own being. And there has been a lack of coordination. And we're finally, thank you everyone. It's very powerful, this group. Our group today is very powerful. What's happening is we're creating a larger antenna of our collective. I'm realizing this sort of swirling, it's moving. It's moving, but it's very, very, very orderly sacred geometrical form, which is comprised of what appears to be the collective of the subtle levels of our physiologies working together in union, in tandem, is continuing to fold back into the source of creation. And as it continues to fold back into the source of creation, it is reflecting in both directions at the same time. So it's both a transmitter and a receiver. Transmitter and receiver. And is transmitting grace. That is the underlying structure, grace. Grace means alignment with everything in creation. Grace means purest form of being. Synchrony. So there's a synchronization that's taking place. Oh, this is good. It appears that as this synchrony is taking place, and of course everything keeps offering back, so more downloads coming in. Evidently, there are many places in creation, very, very high frequency locations. Being is existing in those locations in a very coherent, very pure, very life-supporting manner, where this value of collective coordination is standard. Okay, so this value of collective coordination is now being integrated for everybody in the group, everybody in our webinar, at many different levels of the being. For one thing, for example, we've had our ancestors, and I talked earlier about how they had their belief systems and we had our belief systems, and we need to integrate. We can there's a law of nature, and you are integrating this law of nature here at the spirit level of the being. This is the level of the physiology where we really come to understand in depth the way we interface with laws of nature and utilize, we are laws of nature at the spirit level of being. So this law of nature of having this beautiful, orderly, coherent, holistic function of self. And I'm just watching out in the group how it's a process of self-communication, how it's communicating through us to us. And it works at the molecular level so that we have an integration of ancestral function. This could only happen because everyone in the group today is just such a powerhouse. We have a powerhouse group. The transformation for the ancestors is extremely beautiful, and what's happening for them is an upgrade for hearts. And we did a lot of work on the heart yesterday. So you can go back and check that out from yesterday's recording. But the important thing to note here is that for the ancestors, they are receiving that healing for their hearts. So the transformation that's taking place, and this is a physical transformation that involves an increase of the increase for the capacity to function intelligently for the heart. We think of our brains as being intelligent, right? Higher thinking, higher moral reasoning. But the heart has an intelligence all its own, which is every bit as powerful and is the integrative structure. The heart area, heart chakra, ability to love and feel, is the integrative structure between the intelligence of our minds and the intelligence of being. So in order for the antennas to become more efficient reflections of being, the heart needs to transform. And that also means that the way we metabolize oxygen, the way we purify our system, the way food moves around, nutrition moves around through the body, all that is shifting. And what I'm seeing happening is that sacred geometrical form is coming right into the heart chakra area. And everybody in the audience, all of us need to know that each of the different organs of our body has a different relationship to mental and emotional bodies. So, for example, the ability to feel loved, nourished, protected, cared for comes from the breasts. This is what breasts do, and they're in this area. Lungs too, because lungs bring the infinite, unbounded totality in to become isolated as part of the bound structure of the physiology, and then back again out to totality. So that flow from infinity to isolated back to infinity is ever expressed through the whole respiratory system. It is connection. All that connection to divinity is in this area. So the upgrade is taking place for this area of the body. And it's very interesting what I'm seeing. So I'm seeing it's like a kind of a little holy space is being created around the chest. And that holy space sets a foundation for deepest healing. All the respiratory tract, the lungs, the heart, the breasts, the back, the rhomboids, the arms, arms and hands, any nervous system functions in there, your deeper levels of being, taking a read on the nervous system in that area. Of course, also aspects of digestion, because the digestion's just below there, and that's where we've got this unfoldment of the full potential of all the areas in all the structures in the chest area. Include antidotes for the imbalances in that area. For example, when the body, any kind of like heartburn, anything like that is a rejection. It's like, no, I don't accept it. No, I don't accept it. But guess what? The breasts naturally are extremely receiving. They're very yielding. They're very adoring. It's like a mother who just loves that child absolutely no matter what. So right next to the area where the imbalance is also the solution. So what's happening is this beautiful form which is created is structuring pure integration of all the solutions already present in the imbalance, so that they come together and totality is formed. Our meeting yesterday ended with this really brilliant and amazing woman asking a question about, couldn't we as a group work together, form together to create some kind of, deep healing for mankind. And as I was thinking about her question this morning, and I did answer, I feel that I answered it fairly thoroughly yesterday, but as I was continuing to think about the question this morning, what I realized was within the question is the exact energy frequency of the solution. So the imbalance is that, people are falling into, cruel behavior on each other and damage to the environment and so forth, can't we do something? Like, what can we do? And I realized that in that intention, that little tiny intention, what can we do to help is the energy frequency of doing. Is that compassion and a sense of capability that as a collective we do have the ability to create tremendous change in the relative field of creation, and the ability to apply that tenderest compassion and the intention for all good to everyone through the mechanics of organizing, structuring in an orderly fashion our awareness or attention so that all the pieces are in place that promote that good out into the creation. Basically, nobody wants to damage our nice world, and nobody wants to hurt other people, really. Dramas. Dramas do create the illusion that for some reason it would be good to kill somebody or something like that. So bringing this back, because I'm still seeing we've got this fabulous orderly structure which, by the way, folks, is integrating for everybody in different ways. I'm watching everybody's physiology right now. And this example I gave of it integrating into the chest area, and the other example of it integrating for the ancestors, those are just two forms of integration. But this is a tool. It's a law of nature. With consciousness, we can produce this form. It looks different to me from matrices. We've worked with matrices before, and those are these subtle forms made of the beams or streams of consciousness that form together in sacred geometrical shapes, where each node has a specific energetic quality, like forgiveness or compassion or showers of healing or whatever, different forms, but orderliness. This is different. This is more of an organic form. It's more of a life. It's like, how when you go down under the ocean and there are things that live down there that you can't tell, are they animals or are they plants? They're like, they have qualities of both and sometimes, qualities in between. It's like that. This beautiful, incredible form, which is consistent and is continuing to be the overriding structure of today's webinar, is that we are in this, we are this beautiful swirling rick of a form. Rick meaning like a whirlpool. Like a whirlpool, it's got a whirlpool shape like this, but it's also got this big full round shape on the outside that's turning like that and turning like that. So like a big Torus, And we already know that our astral bodies look like a Torus. So everything is reflected at many levels. We need to get back to dramas, but something else is coming up that I want to share. And that is that yesterday, the ability of the matrix of creation to flow with a predominance of this law of nature that supports truth, supports transparency, supports honesty. It expanded and extended into the simultaneous parallel universes. And that's like having an internet. Remember when the internet first began, it linked together certain universities around the world, right? And then more people got in and more people got in. Well, it's kind of like that. We have this matrix of creation. We've been working with it on Earth. All of us have been getting to the point where we're fairly comfortable with our relationship, the relationship between our individuality and this grid of life, which is all around us, connects us to the trees and the squirrels and the air and the earth and everything. But it's moving into very, very subtle levels of creation now and allowing truth to flow. And what I'm seeing is that this beautiful Torus-like form is a universal form which is used, think of it as kind of either advanced subtle hardware for internet, or we could think of it as a very sophisticated software program which is allows us, gives us capabilities to function in ways that are more sophisticated, more powerful, more deeply healing than we have ever had access to before. We did it. Being did it. The mother of creation, using us as the antennas, did this beautiful, amazing thing. And it's a useful thing. It is very beautiful. And it's clearly useful. It is clearly useful. I'm asking, what's the best way for us to utilize this new technology? Besides that, it is literally speaking to every level of everyone's physiology, every level of the physical body. So from tissue, from organs to tissues to cells to subcellular to molecular to atomic to subatomic layers of subatomic to quantum level. That it's finding its own nature there. It's reflecting its own nature. But also from dense to subtler to subtler to subtler to subtler. It's finding its own nature there. It's working its way with all the chakras. So orderliness is being created, or it's overlaying a quality of orderliness in the manifest structure of who and what we are, which hasn't up till this point been present. Or I should say, I said not up to this point, but I was wrong about that. Yes, there are definitely very high souls who have been on earth, who've had this level of orderliness, orderly structure in their beings, but they have been considered unusual. And we don't want to be really considered unusual too much, because who wants to stand out in a crowd and then become the object of, people thinking that we're weird? So we have the freedom to integrate. We have the freedom to use the orderliness of this structure in such a way as to promote all good in creation without confusing anyone. So that's just being structured right now. I'm seeing a change in the matrix of creation as a byproduct of the presence of this Torus form. Thank you. Thank you. It's grounding. The Torus form is grounding. It's connecting into the center of Mother Earth. Mother Earth's energy field, of course, also looks the same way. It's like a birth. It's like we're looking at a birth of a being, a form of energy, structure, of which all of us are a part. And what we want to do, we have an intention. What is being suggested here, that it's okay to offer intention. So the intention is, how can I best serve? And the answer is, we choose how to best serve. We choose the areas that most need service. So we do need to deal with, because we're talking about mental and emotional bodies and how do we not make trouble for our own lives, we need to clear dramas. So dramas are a combination of fear, a desire for an experience which is really rich, one of those things that's so beautiful it makes you cry. Ego, there's some ego in there, because self-identification and, oh, my life is so important, drama. And the freedom, there's that freedom to stray off of the path of evolution long enough to see where is the center of the path. Because if you're in the very, very center, sometimes it's like a fish underwater who doesn't really know what wet is, because everywhere is wet. So what's wet? So there's that freedom to stray off. And that's what dramas are, those points where one strays off a little bit and then gets snapped back on again. it was a big revelation for me when I discovered that dramas as such could be cleared from the system, because they're kind of complex forms. And yet it is so liberating to release them from the being, because dramas tend to be really, they drag life down, they slow things up. So what we're doing is I'm just offering that suggestion that dramas could be cleared, and how complete could the clearing be with the use of this collective intention of all of us. It's a really tall order. We live next to a high school. That's a drama breeding ground. The answer that's coming back is that the dramas only come up when the ability to self-love is not sufficient enough to support the sense, inner ability to completely self-nourish, self-satisfy, self-support. That's what causes dramas to come up. Then a drama needs to be created in order to feel like life was important. So that ability to self-love. Everybody can refer to, I have got a video on an exercise for self-love. But in this webinar, we've gone far, far beyond that. So what we're doing is we're using that torus shape, this beautiful, birthed, orderly, gorgeous structure, massive structure, to fold like an antenna back into the source of creation, completely resonating with the function of self-acknowledgement, self-love, self-validation, self-security, self-protection. Okay, that was good. So as that energy folded into the source of creation, what came back was forms of sparkling light, kind of, this is what it looked like anyway, coming back through that torus form to activate, to open it up, to wake it up. Like a flower, it grows. Oh, that's really neat. Okay, so each one of us is positioned so that we're at the apex, we're at the innermost point. Each one of us can. This is the nature of such a multidimensional structure, is each one of us can have the most important spot all at the same time. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Think of it like a lotus, like it's the heart of the lotus, or this lotus heart of the mother of the universe. That reality, manifest reality, is all the different petals. And each petal is a different story, is a different set of laws of nature dominating. And if we're out at the point of one of the petals and we're saying, wow, I like this, but I don't really like it very much, I think it could be improved, then what we do is we go in to the center, and from the center, choose a different petal. And as this is a technology, but it happens only when the structure is orderly like this. I mean, I knew this was happening. I have to tell you guys, this is very exciting for me, because I have seen this functioning for some time, actually, a few years, but I hadn't understood the mechanics of it as deeply as it's being understood today by the virtue of all of us being together doing this, so that it could be consistent, so that we could consistently utilize this technology. Everybody holds a kind of a sacred connection to the center of the heart of the lotus. Each of us possesses that. So we find the very, 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 very center. And the center is the sweetest spot. It's the spot where you feel so fulfilled, so complete, so happy, so satisfied, so connected to everybody else and connected to the source of creation, that it's like, who wants to ever leave that? Who wants to go out and bother with the petals? It's like the center of the heart of the lotus is so lovely. But it's good to stay there long enough to soak in that, to stabilize that, and to recognize energetically that key that's like the key to the door to that inner chamber. It's always accessible. And then from there, the petals, not only already do petals exist, but we can grow petals. We can grow specific petals. So what do we want to grow? I'm just asking infinity. I already know that we want to grow a life, a quality of life on earth, which is much higher than what's been experienced in the past. We want to grow levels of health for the body. But these zillions of lotus hearts all through and through the system, that have been established all through and through the system, are supportive of highest health for the physiology. So I expect that all of us are going to start experiencing a big upgrade in health as a result of this. It's not just a medicine. It's also a mechanism for manifestation. So the next thing is getting rid of or eliminating structures in the system. And since we're talking about mental and emotional bodies, the kind of deep-seated beliefs that sit like under the surface, in the subconscious and unconscious levels of the mind. I'm also looking at karma. I found something. Okay. There is a kind of a dark, insidious energy that sits in various locations in the collective. And all the work that we've done up till now in this webinar has been preparatory for us to actually take on something really big. And we were actually aiming toward this yesterday, and we almost completely got there, and we kind of nudged at it a little bit, but we didn't really get it. But today we got it. So we're looking at this dark energy. I first came across it a couple of weeks ago, just to give you guys a feel for what we're onto here. I was watching someone who is one of the truth speakers. You know, they're people who, you know, are truth tellers or whatever, talking about politics and the assassination of Princess Diana, and he made reference to something called the Mother of Darkness Castle in Belgium. And I thought, oh dear, that sounds like, I do a lot of locational healings, right? So I thought, oh, well, maybe I better go check that out and just see what's there and what needs to be healed and what needs to be purified. So I went there. The energy there was so dark. It was so dark. I went in, I got a little taste of it, and I came back out, and, you know, for about a day, I was like, wow, can I shake this? Because it was so dark. But it wasn't because the castle itself was so dark. It was because the castle represented a point in creation that was standing as a little holding ground for a much bigger, more abstract, dark energy, which was abstract enough and difficult enough to access that it seems kind of creepy and scary from a human point of view. How does one deal with something like that? That darkness is a lack of coordination between ourself and in what we could call environmental structures, but really structures at deeper levels of self. So I'm just looking at it. And what I'm seeing is we bump into this energy around the spirit and causal level of the physiology. Nothing dark can ever touch the field of pure being, because pure being is just absolute, pure, absolute. There's nothing. Brahman consumes everything. So what we're dealing with here is still something in what we would think of as the manifest levels of creation, which means it has some incompletion in it. It has some incompletion to it. And what I'm doing is I'm just offering the petal, the lotus petal, that allows all of us to restructure. Oh, here it goes. I can feel the energy starting to churn now. We can restructure what we think of as our whole universe, not just, oh, I'm in the car and I'm driving and I want to be somewhere else or something like that, but the whole universe is influenced because this energy is at such a deep level. The whole universe is influenced by it. And what I'm seeing is the light of pure source of creation light moving into where that dark mother of darkness castle energy is. And it's just mixing in that that sort of blissful mix where you have the negativity and the positivity together in such a degree as to create such a quality of blissfulness. And it, blissful is the best word I'm finding to use right now, guys. And sorry, I don't really think it's like the perfect word, but it's the one that I found. So thank you for bearing with me as we do that, as we move that, as we are moving that, and we are moving it. And you know, when the energy moves like this, it is so satisfying. It has such a yummy, incredible, you know, causing our bodies to produce endorphins and dopamine and serotonin, that kind of effect physically. But at the same time, it's also creating that effect in the larger sphere of the environment. So it's like our little heart of the lotus is now blossoming into a really big, somebody's coming in, ooh. Anyway, it's blossoming into a form which is extremely beautiful. Oh, question, thank you. Great, great, thank you. Somebody asked some questions coming in. We'll address those in just a second while we finish this. As this glorious flower, I take a lot of lotus pictures because we have a little pond in back of our house with lotuses in it, and they're really pretty. So anyway, using that analogy today, the point is that it all offers back to the source of creation. The more beautiful it becomes, the more satiating it becomes, the more luscious this experience becomes, the more necessary it is that we're offering it at the feet of the divine and just saying, this is you, this is you, this is you, this is you. It is our privilege, honor, and joy to be your reflection and to experience what it's like to be in the human body and to be having this experience and to be given this gift of being this aspect of divinity. Super amazing, super beautiful. And of course, when you drop that experience into infinity, in a sense, it goes into non-manifest level of expression, but that's okay because it also ripples out infinitely. And the change which has taken place in our physiologies, and I have to say huge healings, physical healings just took place for everybody in the group with this big thing that just happened, that we get to keep that. We get to keep the memory, how we created it, how it made us feel, all the healing that took place in our physiologies along with it, and the ability to go back and recreate it anytime we wish. And we have the recording too, so we can redo this one or we can do new ones. It's an experience I wouldn't have had if it hadn't been for you. And I just want to say how grateful I am for that, because that's huge. For me, that's huge. That's just huge. Thank you. Here's a question. Okay, anonymous question. There are two questions. Is it possible to fully activate and anchor the beliefs that, number one, there is infinite abundance? Two, sharing, that there is great joy in sharing. So anchoring comes from repeated experience. like dyeing the cloth, right? You make the color fast in the cloth by putting it in the dye, putting it in the sun, putting it in the dye, putting it in the sun. After a while, the color is anchored into the cloth and it can't come out. So what we just did was an anchoring. It was one step of an anchoring. I offer and recommend for everyone to repeat that. Repeat ad infinitum. However, I would like to add that idea that there is infinite abundance, particularly, I think the element of sharing is all about that the whole, I want to answer the second part of that first. And then there's yet another question. So thank you so much I love questions. Thank you. So the sharing part is that even though I'm having this incredible, luscious, exuberant, incredible experience, if I share it by offering it back into the source of creation, it comes back to me in a refined form, which changes my physiology permanently, and I am ever upgraded by it. Therefore, I own that experience. I own that abundance in a way that I would never have owned it if I hadn't given it away. And that's kind of like, I don't know, there was some meme or something about love that was going around like a decade ago that, you know, love only grows if you give it away or something like that. So in a sense, that's the first part of it, is the idea that that it's only by giving, it's only by expanding and extending and sharing that which is absolutely wonderful that we recreate ourselves to be able to do that again the next time in a bigger way. So every time we give, the next time now we're ready to give more. And I'm sure that this healing that took place in this session today, as big as it was, is going to be just like that too. Okay. The belief that there is infinite abundance. Infinite abundance. So the concept of infinite abundance is diametrically opposed to the concept of lack, of loss, of that there isn't enough. So what we're doing is we're creating this luscious relationship again, where we have the quality of there isn't enough, there's lack, and I'm not feeling abundant. And that's this side of the caudate. This is the, let's see, this would be the amygdala, I think, is the name of the pain center. And we're mixing it with the infinite abundance resonation. And what happens here, I mentioned before that a lot of the imbalances tend to sit up here in the relative level of the physiology, and this there isn't enough, the feeling of not enough, it sits in at like a subconscious and unconscious level of the mind. As such, there's a feeling on the conscious level of the mind that I'm holding a belief that's not in my highest and best interest, but I can't get at it because it's at some unconscious level of my mind. I can't even find it. So how can I get rid of it? But the answer, the solution lies in the problem, always. The solutions and the problems and solutions are like this, really. So the quality of abundance, affluence, fullness of wealth, we own. I'm making reference, I'm referring back to the divine. I'm also referring back to that big Torus form. How can we use it to stabilize? Pure abundance, pure wealth comes from the cosmos, ultimately. For example, on Earth, our dollar is based on the gold standard, but gold comes from the stars. So the stars possess huge amounts of wealth. In fact, there are asteroids and moons and things in our galaxy, even in our solar system, we don't know for sure, that could be loaded up with all kinds of stuff. Oh, in fact, I saw something on Reddit the other day that a planet was found that was a giant diamond, and not shaped like a cut diamond. It's a big planet, you know. But there are planets that are full of wealth, like wealth beyond anything we can imagine, or that we could, at this time, that we're able to manifest at this time. So The source of abundance is quite infinite. A whole planet made of diamond. Woo! Infinite. There may be whole planets made of gold. It's possible. The amount of resource in the sun is infinite. And so beautiful. You guys are beautiful. That infinite wealth is already a reality in creation. What we need to do is we need to take that resonation, that energy frequency, that energy signature of abundant wealth, infinite abundance, and put it in your bank account. So the Torus form, this nice mobile form, energetically, it's an energetic form, sits in the bank account, and it sits with the resonation of infinite abundance. And it stabilizes. It stabilizes because we give it to everyone. Everyone's bank account. Everyone's, what if we don't keep our money in a bank? What if we keep it under our mattress? Okay, everyone's mattress. Wherever you keep your money, wherever you keep your affluence, abundance, and maybe abundance also we want to think of in terms of abundantly good health, abundantly rich relationships with other people, abundance of knowledge and wisdom, abundance of all the resources of creation necessary to produce anything. Then maybe we don't even need money or wealth. It's enough that we already have everything. To have everything is enough. But it's good. The sharing part is really, thanks for putting that in the question. That was really sweet. It shows what a compassionate heart you have, anonymous person who asked that question. I'm just looking at how the energy frequencies are shifting as a result of integrating the concept of infinite abundance into this beautiful big Torus form. And what I'm seeing, the most important thing that's coming forth as a byproduct of abundance is not wealth. It is knowledge. It's knowledge and truth and wisdom. Knowledge is power. And power also, and that means, and power not so much in terms of power to have control over other people, but as in the power to create one's own reality concisely, or the power to create one's own reality most aligned with divine law, divine cosmic evolution, the will of God, if you will. And so it folds in on itself. So infinite abundance is folding in on itself. We're creating it's already creating a self-referral loop. That's how it becomes infinite, of course. So abundance folds in, becomes infinite. Oh, on that note, I'm going to answer the second question in just a second, but I wanted to add one thing that I wanted to offer everyone today. And that is that at the beginning of this session and last session, I described energy work as the process of directing awareness intelligently. Remember? So it occurred to me that the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most complete thing we can ever do with our awareness, the most incredible place we can ever direct our awareness, ever, is to direct it in on its own nature and honor it as the light of our own being, that it is aware of itself. I offer this as a little gift to everyone to just try it. Take your awareness, have it look at itself, and know itself as the purest material in creation, infinite in its nature. Your essential nature. It is blissful. It is really sweet to do that. And what it does is it causes a huge, huge, tremendous expansion of light, and it's beautiful. And I thank you for bearing with me during that little exercise, because it's something that you will find useful again and again, that it has this ability to expand on itself ad infinitum. Okay, second part of the question. Also, can we stabilize the emotions which carry higher frequency? Compassion, love, and joy. Yes, and it's interesting. I hadn't read that question till already after we just did the little exercise, but I'd like to say that this is the way to stabilize. Again, stabilizing, anchoring, anything like that comes from repetition. So what we need to do is, and I talked about this a little bit more yesterday, but what we're doing is we're swinging our awareness back and forth between transformation of the physical form, transformation of the mental, emotional, personality level, the subtler manifest level of the self, and then everything folding back into infinite being. And we keep swinging back and forth in these waves through this whole structure. And the reason that we do that is it is a kind of a dyeing the cloth process, that the changes that take place in the physiology as a byproduct of the experiences that we're having in these webinars are going to allow us to have more experiences of this type and more powerful experiences of this type as we move into the future. And at every point, when we offer the entire experiential process back into the divine, thy will be done, this is just your servant, your instrument, your vehicle for expressing and experiencing all this creation, then the result is it doesn't end. Ultimately, like in this question, can we stabilize the emotions which carry higher frequency? I'm looking at the question deeply. And what I'm seeing is that our usefulness as antennas of the universe would come from not so much stabilizing, in that every life experience and situation calls for a different kind of emotion or mix of emotions, but tremendous stabilizing the ability to have tremendous facility to manifest those higher frequencies. We want to, at each moment of creation, be able to manifest precisely, concisely, the frequency which is most called for at that moment to promote highest evolution. So I'm rewording the question just a little bit. But so what we want to do is strengthen the capacity, the capability to bring forth those emotions: compassion, love, joy, forgiveness, acknowledgement. It comes from a restructuring of the heart. And we worked a long time on a big restructuring for the heart yesterday, but let me just look into today's session and see if anything more can be done. And we actually did a little healing for that area earlier in our webinar as well. But let's just look to the heart for a moment. Again, fear of the melting heart, fear of feeling feelings that are so intense that they make you cry, stops people. It makes people put on a damper sometimes in their hearts, in their emotions. And to really get to the really high frequencies, we have to be super courageous. And we have to recognize that what we're going for may not be a kind of fluffy, puffy kind of lightness, but can be a combination of influences, some of which involve a stretching. They involve stretching a little bit. And the stretching, like an asana, can be a little uncomfortable, but can also feel really good, like a yawn or like a sneeze. When there's a deep-rooted stress in the system, it doesn't just go, doesn't just come out in a breath. What happens is we pull back. The body wants to purify, so it's going to push something out. But instead of that, we go, no, no, I'm holding it in, I'm holding it in. And by pulling it back, it's like pulling the arrow back on the bow. You pull the opposite direction. Then when the sneeze lets go, it's this huge kaplow, and then all this deep stuff in the system pushes out of the body, right? So this sometimes our process looks like that. Now, what we're aiming for in these webinars is how can we structure the deep, deep purifications, the going into those really dark, untouched spaces and pulling out the imbalances from those spaces in a way that is graceful, that rather than it being a big dramatic explosion where everybody runs around and gets upset, if it could come out in a way that would be more, that would be powerful, but not difficult or painful, or not super unpleasant, or not, most of all, causing more stress as it comes out, which is what happens in the case of those really intense dramas, you know, that are designed for purifying the world and the environment, but often carry stress with them too. The drama perpetuates itself. And we don't want to perpetuate the drama. We want to perpetuate our capacity to go at very deep, profound levels to purify out the deepest, most insidious darknesses from our own being and from the collective in such a way as to be absolutely comfortable, graceful, beautiful, elegant. So that's the seed that's being dropped into the absolute at the moment. And that seed is coming back. Whoa. Okay, I know we're at 16 minutes, so I'm not going to go much longer, but I have to tell you what happened when that seed got dropped in and came back. What happened was the revealing of a kind of academy, the revealing of a place that honors knowledge and wisdom, which is A, accessible to all of us, is B, asking that we honor it by approaching with discipline, and whatever that means to you. And C is basically being initiated in the being. This academy of highest learning, of highest wisdom. Wow. It said stabilize emotions to carry high frequency. So in this self-created academy of highest learning, all the specific resources required to construct self in such a way as to be able to accomplish anything, to do anything but to know anything, and to be able to handle consciousness in an extremely sophisticated and powerful manner is stabilized. This is a home of knowledge. But it is a home of knowledge, unlike the home of all the laws of nature, the home of all knowledge, the source of creation, which is unmanifest. This is ever so slightly manifest. This is something that is integrating into, very interestingly, the part of the being that I call the superconscious. And the superconscious is an aspect of the energy structure of the being responsible for self-love, self-acknowledgement, self-understanding. In a sense, it is a sort of cosmic ego level of the self. And this academy of highest learning is revealing itself as a fundamental frequency or structure of your essential nature. It's got a lot to it. There's a, boy, it looks like I could probably do a whole webinar just on that. But because our time is out, I can't today, but to my team, we should think about doing a webinar on the Academy of Highest Wisdom, or the Academy of Highest Knowledge, or the Academy of Highest Learning. It is entirely possible for all of you who are in the webinar today and who may see this webinar in the future, that the fact that this structure has revealed itself as such will give rise to some kind of organized, on my part, some kind of lessons or like a class type setting. I know a lot of people, more than one person has asked me, oh, could you do some kind of a study group or study sessions or something like that where we could, you know, have lessons and so forth. And so the answer is, well, this was obviously a step in that direction. So we will continue on, continue stepping in this direction, getting my mouse here, as we go along. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for the super awesome questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining me today. I hope you enjoy yesterday's healing webinar as well. It was a lot of fun to do both of them. I enjoyed it immensely. And I'm looking forward to connecting up with everyone in the future as we go along. Oh, another question. Oh, sweetie, thank you. That was a big thank you and lots of love that came in. Thank you for being here. It was so much fun. It was so good. It was so good. You all are so good. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting, but we'll see you again soon. Bye. All my love to everyone.